Hello, and welcome to the Cheap Seats. This is the first show of 2021. I'm
22.
Newlands.
22.
22. Oh, sorry. 2022.
I wish it was
all the
2021. We were top of the league in 2021 at this time.
True. 2022. I do apologize. Happy New Year to you too. I'm doing it from the Newlands Cricket Ground and got all the guys around the country here ready back to talk all things Premier League. This is your Premier League show. Remember, we are sponsored by Classic Shirts today, so please go look at their YouTube site or their Instagram site. At Classic Shirts ZA on Instagram. Also, their website at classicshirts.co.za. They've got a lot of really lovely shirts there, and we are waiting for the moment we unveil one of the most incredible shirts.
The bevy.
I think the bevy of shirts that we have. But remember, also, most important, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and let us know what you think. And also follow. We've got live cricket on the go right now with official ball-by-ball broadcaster or radio broadcaster of this series. So you've got that throughout the day. Then you'll have our podcasts in the evening to go to bed to. So this week, AFCON has started. Seeing a lot of our Premier League stars playing in AFCON. So my thing was, because it is January, and every January it's like Christmas for every football fan, it's the transfer market. So I thought we'd ask a question of the guys in the top six and some important relevant clubs like maybe Newcastle, West Ham and Leicester. What's the one
United.
thing each...
And I was about to say in Man United.
Yes. But what's the one thing each team needs? In January, what's the one thing each team needs to do, to buy, to sell, to hold? And we'll figure it out as we go along. So the first club I wanted to talk about, what you need to turn away. We're going to talk about the number one club in the country. City have pulled away in December. And now, what does Manchester City need? My first guess was, I looked at it and I was like, actually, they don't need much because they have a massive gap like last season. But I thought maybe sort out your core squad in terms of extending the contracts of João Cancelo, who's been worldly, or even Raheem Sterling, because he's had a great season. But they could also, and I'm going to ask you, Cyrus, look to clear the decks, set themselves up for a big summer push for a big striker. It won't be Harry Kane, we know that. He's staying at Spurs for the rest of his life. But what do you think they need?
Okay, so let's start this by asking a question, and you should never do that, right? When is the Pep sabbatical? Because if I remember correctly, Pep said this or next season might be his last season at City. That really affects everything that happens with this club, because the reality is a lot of these players have been there, done that. They've won the Premier League. In fact, they do it so often, people just don't care. And what they really want is the Champions League. So that's been the one they keep knocking on the door of. And I think that when you look at it from a player perspective, they've already started the process of looking for new blood to bring in. That's basically what Jack Grealish is, because in a way he's sort of trying to fill that David Silva role, not particularly well, but I think that's what they're expecting him to do. And then you've got the likes of Bernardo Silva, as well as some of the other stalwarts that have been there for a while. So I think that City will definitely let guys go. Ferran Torres shows that. And I think Sterling is going to be the next one out the door. They just don't have a need for him. He doesn't really have much more to do there. And so I think what City need to do is tie up the contracts they can and then brace themselves for the Pepsidus. Because once he goes, there's going to be an exodus of a lot of players.
Yeah,
Sorry, doesn't their current recruitment already show that they're starting to brace for that? Because what they targeted, what they got this summer was Jack Grealish, and what they targeted was Harry Kane, and that's been very different from the sort of player that Pep has looked for in previous seasons. What he's looked for has been kind of different. He's looked at around those Bernardo Silvas and those like those technicians, and the move away from that the season to like the English sort of superstar core from the Euros was almost like different to how Pep has generally gone about his recruitment. So it's almost as if they're already preparing for that. They're almost preparing for pushing the boat out for an Erling Haaland, you'd think. And that is probably preparing the squad to play without Pep, because the squad was prepared for many years to play with Pep, and that squad probably needs to get to a point where they can play with any one of these managers who are on the European merry-go-round, because once Pep leaves, they're going to jump back on that European merry-go-round with all these coaches who go around in circles.
The Pope pegs it, or the pegs it. But I do think that when Pexit does happen, let's just remember two things here. The first one being, this could be like Football Manager. Maybe Pep wanted to play a different style of football. He's won everything with Man City as it was constructed. Why not try it with a striker, But I do think that they are giving themselves the option. And let's not forget that Pochettino starts with the P, so does Pep, and the chances are that might be where they go.
Oh, don't say that to Manchester United fans. Let's move on to the next.
Don't say that to me. What are you talking about? That'll break my heart. He's coming home. He's coming home.
I think
He's coming home after 18 months.
Some people always look at their exes even when they're happily married. Gene, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, guys, next team. Let's move on swiftly. Cyrus, it is your team. It is Chelsea. They're number 2 in the log. At this point in time, and looking at Chelsea, Cyrus, I would say the one thing would be sort out the Lukaku situation. What do you say?
No, I think the Lukaku stuff has sorted itself out. Primarily, the issue is the guy said some absolutely ridiculous stuff in the press. They've dealt with it as a club. They move forward. I don't think that there's going to be much cause for what happens around Lukaku, because they're not going to recoup that money. And if you look at the way Chelsea have operated in the past, they don't just splash and then let it go for nothing. They will extract as much out of Lukaku as they humanly can. And he hasn't been as bad as, let's say, a Fernando Torres, or shall we say, a Werner. But the thing that Chelsea do need currently is fullbacks. The injuries have really ripped them apart there, and it's an obvious one. Like you see, Luca Dean was being linked to the club. That doesn't seem to be happening. Potentially recalling Emerson from France would be a big one, but that also seems to be problematic. I'm not sure what the issues are with the contractual situation.
I think they rejected it twice.
Well,
reports. Yeah.
Which is crazy, because you're like, okay, hang on a second, but he's our guy. But anyway, whatever the case may be. But then even they're talking about Kurzawa from PSG potentially being an option. The thing Chelsea don't want to do is purchase. What they'd like to do is loan. But the loan market is not great, especially in the positions that they're looking at, and also at the level that they want them to play at, because you don't just want to get any old Luke Shaw. I mean, any old left back. It's got to be, poor. Stop cheering at my Luke Shaw disses. But I think the thing is that they've got to really look at players that will complement the system without breaking the system that they currently have, and it's a tightrope that.
Almost as if they should have kept Livramento and Lamptey, kind of.
If they could have, but those youngsters wanted to play. I mean, if you look at it, there's a right back that we let go, the Italian right back that we let go. You've caught me on a bad memory there, by the way. Yeah, and Zappacosta could be playing right now if you had just been sort of sitting in the wings. Instead, we still have Ross Barkley.
Cyrus, isn't Baba Rahman still on your books?
I think we finally got rid of him. Thank goodness. And not to say that he was terrible. I don't think Baba was actually a bad player. He just was never wanted by any of the managers. He was one of those who was brought in by the director of football, and he wasn't a player that really suited the mold of what Chelsea were looking for. And at that
kind of like the left back version of Donny van der Beek.
Basically. In fact, I don't know if I've got any other great examples. So I think that's where Chelsea's main need is at the moment.
Okay.
And also it's just waiting for Mendy to come back from AFCON. So we're all white-knuckling it through Kepa, and so far so good. But there's league games and League Cup games and all sorts coming up. So
it's probably one for the summer, but I would suggest that a player like Aaron Creswell would be very good at Chelsea. He'd be able to provide competition for Chilwell. They're quite similar, and it would give Chelsea a good option for rotation in that position.
But what then happens to Alonso? Is Alonso out the door now?
He's got to go.
He must rot.
Oh my word! Well, I mean, Alonso should go to Spain. I think he'd really have a good go there.
He must go to Mourinho in Roma. That's where he must go.
He is so slow now. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
There are kids who are under the age of 1 who can read what he's doing. So he's just that slow.
Okay, let's move on to the next team. Another team that Wahid does not like, but we're going to talk about anyway. It's Liverpool. Apart from the AFCON guys who left, Naby Keita, the man of the matches in AFCON, who was man of the match in the game that Guinea played against Malawi. Sadio Mane, man of the match against the game against Zimbabwe, even though I actually thought Zimbabwe should have done something there. The referee did drink them a little bit.
Let's not go there.
We're not going to go there. Dean, I thought for Liverpool, right, it would be to try and get cover for that front three. Try find a way to get an upgrade to Divock Origi, who is great. Cyrus will tell you how great Divock Origi is. But also just try and figure out how they can get more goals, someone who can get more goals out of Firmino. Outside of if those guys if Mane and Salah spend the entirety of February at AFCON, what are we going to do? So we might need some short-term guys in. But what do you think Liverpool need? What's the one thing Liverpool should look to do in January?
Yeah, I think I was going to say extending Salah's contract because I know it's up for extension at the moment, and Salah has come out and said he wants to stay and it's out of his hands. So I think that he definitely obviously wants to stay in Liverpool, but I think that would be top priority if I was sitting in that boardroom at Liverpool and extend his contract. Obviously, everyone knows that, and I think we'll see it even more now in January with Mane and Salah being out at AFCON, just how adept the backup players are in Minamino, and obviously Jota's now playing, and Origi. So it's been no doubt that they've needed to get cover for that front three. So I definitely think it's a good place to invest in. But then also, if you have a look at the back, we saw what happened last season with Van Dijk being injured, and just what kind of havoc that caused in that Liverpool squad. So I know they went and got Konate, which is looking like a really good option, but I would want someone that can probably also stand in. I know they've got Joel Matip, but someone else in that back line, I would say, is probably the next priority after that front three. But yeah, for me, definitely number one, extending Salah, and number two, trying to find someone to kind of come in. And I don't know, with the way that Klopp plays, obviously the classic number 9 striker isn't the way that they play. So you need someone to fit that Firmino role, which is going to be a tough thing to find, I would imagine. So it would be tough. Oh no.
I was going
to you're going to say like Richarlison or something.
No, Werner.
Look, Werner potentially, but I don't think that's the guy. I actually think if there's a player that Liverpool could definitely utilize, that they could get on loan, who would give them both the skill and the speed that fills in what they're missing from Mane and Salah, is a guy from Spurs, Bergwijn. And but you think about Steven Bergwijn at Liverpool running through those channels that he doesn't necessarily get the opportunity to do at Spurs. I think he'd be a real hit there. And when you look at who he is as a player, is he any worse than Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain?
Well, Ajax have put in a bid for him, so I know his heart's set on that apparently. But Conte just had an interview before we went live and has said that he's part of his plan. So we'll see. But yeah,
It's part of his
Hoyland
plans
could be a
to
good
sell
option.
him.
Yes.
He's
To
23 years
Newcastle
old. I
for
think
a lot of
honestly,
money.
He's so good.
Spurs should give him a chance. 23 years
They
old,
really
the guy's pacey, and now with Son being out, we need to give him a chance.
Yes, Wahid?
Yeah, so I think Dean's brought up an issue about Liverpool centre backs, and I actually don't think it's that much of an issue because if we look at it right now, they've got Van Dijk and they've got Matip, who are the first choice.
Mm-hmm.
They've got Ibrahima Konate behind him, and that means that Joe Gomez isn't getting a game. So Joe Gomez is going to be shifted on, but he's a hell of a good centre half. So is Klopp really in the market for is Klopp really in the market for a fourth centre half when he has one on the books that he's not using very well? Or
Isn't there
is he?
Phillips?
Sorry.
Isn't there that youngster Phillips as well? Don't they have
Yeah,
another
and
youngster?
Phillips.
he's transfer listed because Klopp said he's too
Yeah,
good to be fit to it. But at the moment, he's got 4 good choice centre backs, and he's not able to really use them in rotation. So why is there this need for another centre back? I mean, they're well stocked there. It's probably more. They probably more need a bit of depth in central midfield where past Henderson and co they don't actually have much. That's probably depth up front and depth at the back is in the middle is probably more important than depth at the back at the moment.
Fair enough.
Yes. No, that Wahid makes some really good points. I think that's the other side of Liverpool is that central midfield. Wijnaldum's gone, hasn't clicked as well this season as what we'd like. And so you kind of feel that they need to find a way to either move off of some of the guys like Oxlade-Chamberlain, Newcastle's calling, and then try to get some other quality players, maybe upgrade in that midfield. Maybe it's time to look to find Jordan Henderson his retirement village. And see whether
he could get back, wouldn't he?
Yeah. Well, there's a Spurs guy.
Wijnaldum would do well at Chelsea. Wijnaldum would do well at Liverpool.
Everywhere.
Wijnaldum would do well. Like he could find another a home back at Newcastle where he came from. He'd fit in for a lot of teams at the moment. He'd tick a lot of boxes.
Yes, but would Liverpool want to go back to an X?
Yeah,
they took Robbie Palmer back a few times.
They've done it before.
Yeah, they have. That is pretty true. But like they let him go last season. But anyway, let's move on to a team that I didn't expect to be in the top 4. And I didn't expect them to see them this high, but anyway, they are this high. It is.
Chains in hand and ball. Come on, we're not doing ourselves.
It doesn't matter if you go to the log. We're 4th, as Pizzo Musimani says. The great Pizzo Musimani says, "Games in hand are games in hand." They mean
you guys
nothing.
also top of the log in the beginning because of alphabetical order.
That's why when I start the season and I do these list type of shows, I start with Arsenal. It makes sense.
But let's also be totally honest here. When Spurs were topping tables, somebody's head was near exploding, and we all knew what was coming. So it's one of those things where you're just like, okay, I guess. But Arsenal are in a really interesting spot. I'm keen to hear what you have to say, Paul. Where do you think your team? Needs to
with me, it's the one thing that I think they need to do this January is position some of the players they want to let go, and try to figure out a way to get them out now. Kolasinac is one of them. Look for a home for
He's still at Arsenal.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, he is.
They needed a bodyguard, and he's been really good.
Well, we needed a bodyguard at Nottingham Forest because we played like Real Madrid, but it was a Sunday pub team.
Fail Madrid.
Hey, dude, fail Madrid. But Kolasinac, Edin Nketiah, I know we got Ainsley Maitland-Niles on loan. That needs to be permanent. There's a lot of work that needs to happen in order for Mikel to now find the upgrades to the guys who are going to cover. So left back is sorted, centre half is sorted with Saliba coming back. So you'll have 3 good centre halves. Right back.
Does he trust Saliba?
He should.
He should.
Yeah, but he hasn't yet. He hasn't yet. It's a weird situation. They paid £30 million for him, and every time he comes, it looks like that Arteta doesn't care much for him.
And that's the problem.
Money van de Beek.
I believe he's Money van der Beek now.
And so for me, right back as well, like we saw this weekend, Cedric Suarez is pop. Like he's finished. I'm sorry. Like we need to find someone else. But the other thing is, the most important thing is you need to start looking for a striker. I don't understand. Well, if you don't want Aubameyang and you want him out, and Lacazette's not the future, you need to find someone at the top. And it's not these kids. Like they're there. Martinelli is good on the left. Find someone centrally who can do the job for you. I know in December, Dean was talking about Dusan Vlahovic. I'm not so sure, but find a striker who's under 25 who can score you goals, which is very hard to do. But for me, that's the thing. Yes, Cyrus?
There's one. It's not happening in January, though. But he's playing his socks off in Roma. He's a London lad, and there's already
Abraham at Arsenal.
Yeah.
That would fit everything. It would work. And finally, we can cross the ball in for somebody to header it, because Aubameyang doesn't like headering.
He's not great.
Doesn't matter.
He can get
as long as he's tall enough.
He just look like a tree. Yeah, just stand there. At some point, he might get hit in the right spot. Yeah. But I think somebody like Tammy Abraham would definitely be the kind of player that Arsenal would look to sign. And Roma are in a there or thereabouts kind of space. You just don't know what you're going to get. But I also think that Italy's a great place to go shopping. And is it Theo Hernandez, who's also at AC Milan?
Yes, but he's not a striker, though. He's like a winger.
Oh, he's a forward. He's a forward. And the reality is, you don't necessarily play with a striker at the moment. You do need forward players. And I think that looking at the issues with Arsenal right now, I always laugh when I see Martinelli, because the way Arsenal fans celebrated him as the second coming when he scored to draw a game against Chelsea. And then the proof is in the pudding. If you celebrate mediocrity, you're going to get it.
Hey, dude, he ran half the field to score a goal.
After Jorginho tripped over himself. I mean, and there was no one there. If he outpaced the entire team,
didn't you celebrate when Demba Ba scored the goal after Steven Gerrard slipped? Same thing. Yeah. You can't just be like, one's good for the one and one's good for the other.
That one meant something, right? It meant that Liverpool don't win the league. That was a good deal for all of us on this show. But the thing about it, though, is that
I post that GIF at least once a day.
Yeah. Well, what about the one with Eden Hazard absolutely tearing up Arsenal? Basically saying, "Oh, you're going to jump on my back? Get off me." But going back to what the Gunners need, I do think that there's a lot of really interesting players that they can look at in England, and I don't know if a club like we're going to talk about Newcastle. Newcastle are clearly a buying club, but if they had to sell certain players, would Alan Saint-Maximin really not be an Arsenal player?
He's too old. That's the only problem. He'd fit in right well at the top of the castle. He'd probably score a lot of goals, but I don't see if Arteta likes
him. Isn't that who Arsenal thought they signed in Pepe?
With Nicola Pepe, exactly. He is exactly who Arsenal thought they were getting in Nicola Pepe.
Well, I can't fault that. It's a great comparison. It's a great idea. It's just I don't see Arteta going for it.
I honestly think France is not the place people should shop anymore, because I was thinking about it. Where have we gone to France and got a really good player in those clubs that are fighting? No, but I'm talking
in recent years. In recent
years, you look at Pepe, not a vibe.
Well, not just Ndombele.
Terrible.
Well,
look at half of the other guys that we went and got. Clinton and G at Spurs, terrible.
It's just Spurs scouting network. It's not everybody else.
But this is what I'm talking about, Arsenal, Spurs, West Ham to some extent, the guys that are coming up, throw United in there. The guys that are fighting for fourth shouldn't be shopping in France anymore. I think you need Italy now.
Or the Netherlands.
It's
Leicester have done well in France. Leicester have done very well in France. Outside of Kante, they've done really well. Even
Mahrez and Kante.
Is Mahrez? Did Mahrez come from Ligue 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
He did.
Like
the age profile is wrong, but I think Michel Antonio could do well at Arsenal. I think he's the type of player who could do well in that team.
Well,
You'll
actually,
see
Cyrus
a
doesn't
video
like
for
Antonio.
6 months.
because he's a right back playing as a striker. But
Yeah.
I still
Just
don't
Okay.
understand how he's getting goals. I just don't understand.
Okay, guys, let's move on because the next two clubs might take a very long time to do. Oh well, the one after this one. We're going to talk about Spurs because I have Manchester United on the log. Spursy. Dean, what do you guys need outside of, I don't know, sorting out Harry Kane?
No, we need a lot, to be fair. But the one person that we have not replaced, and I know we've done a lot of replacements that have failed, but the one thing that we just don't have is a number 10 and a ball-playing midfielder. It's the one thing that's completely lacking in our team since 2020, and it shows if you look at that Carabao Cup game against Chelsea, the midfield was nowhere, and Skip and Højbjerg do a decent job every now and then, but they just don't have enough progressive passes to really cut through lines when they need to. So we desperately need a ball player. I know we were apparently in talks Coutinho, but I didn't want Coutinho. I don't think he kind of fits that Conte role. And
Conte has spoken quite glowingly of Christian Eriksen, who
So I mean, there'll always be a special place in the heart, but I also don't want to sign a guy that's a little bit
older. Do you really want to be saying special place in the heart about Christian Eriksen? I mean,
well, he left, and then
I get that
things have not gone well.
He's had his cardiac issues,
yeah.
So that's the main reason.
But I think so. If I was looking at players, so I've been doing a bit of who we've been linked to. So there's Brozovic, obviously at Inter. That's Conte's got a good connection with, but apparently he wants to stay at Inter. But there's a player in Lyon, which I know I've just said France is not the place to go, but Bruno Guimaraes, or however you pronounce it. He plays at Lyon. He's Brazilian. He's young, and he's got really great ball skills, and he's looking to get forward all the time. Can't say I've watched a lot of him. I've watched a YouTube clip, which obviously makes every player looks amazing.
He must be God level.
Yeah. So, and the good thing is having Paratici at the club as well as Conte, you know that they're looking and they're working together like they have in the past, and whatever kind of links they are coming up with are hopefully good ones, and kind of put a little bit more trust in the transfers we're going after. But other than that, there's a lot of other names like Traore we're being linked with, another centre-back we're being linked with. Dusan Vlahovic.
He's going to wrinkle his nose, but a player who would make a lot of sense to Spurs would be Jesse Lingard.
Yeah.
Jesse Lingard would make a lot of sense for Spurs.
It's just come out today that we've opened talks with him.
He's available, whether it's on loan or a permanent transfer. He's a player that would make sense in terms of the acquisition and of the holes in this current Spurs squad.
Yeah, so
the only problem is you find a guy for Dele Alli. That's the only problem.
Newcastle.
Yeah, Newcastle, the dumping ground.
You can't give everybody to Newcastle, but let's move on to Wahid's favorite subject. Wahid's the team that keeps Wahid up at night. Ralph Rangnick's famous corridor of uncertainty in the 4-2-2. Manchester United. Wahid, I love the corridor of uncertainty. I love it for Kagiso Rabada. I'm just not sure about Manchester United. I think that's the one thing he needs to fix. 4-2-3-1 makes sense, not 4-2-2-2, surely.
I don't know what you're on about, bro. We're perfect. Like, we don't need it.
The gargantuan.
Beat Villa once in the FA Cup.
We won. I didn't wake up with heartbreak.
Heartbreak Hotel.
Guys, honestly, like where to start the problems at Man United, and I think that if we're going to talk about one thing, and I think there's so many things that we can talk about in Man United that I think we need to narrow it down to one thing. And I think that with the leaks coming out in the media at the moment, I think that the biggest issue at the club is a cultural one, and I think that there is too much of a disharmony in the squad, and that disharmony needs to be sorted out. And I'd say that that's the one thing that needs to be sorted. So if we're going to start with one thing, that's the starting point of where Man United need to start to go forward. So forget 4-2-2-2, forget 4-2-3-1, forget 3-5-2, forget whatever you want to call it. Let's start with the basics of any squad, and that's squad harmony. And that comes down to squad management. And the question then goes to, how are we going to get the squad to a more harmonious space? How are we going to get rid of the cliques? How are we going to get the squad to a place where they're playing for each other, they're playing for the badge, they're playing for reasons other than their bank balances? And I think that the starting point there would be a clear out. And we need, obviously, clicks start to happen when the squad isn't happy with whatever's happening. So maybe the squad isn't happy with the treatment of a Donny van der Beek, with the treatment of a Jesse Lingard, with the treatment of a Dean Henderson. So I think the problems will start to be alleviated when we take this extremely bloated squad and start cutting it down. So I think that is probably the starting point. So if we can narrow it down to one thing that you want me to see, that I want to see Man United do, is to move on the problematic players in the team. I've heard that Dean Henderson is a very problematic player. Him and his agent are responsible for many of the leaks to the media. They are responsible for a lot of what's happening within the squad. So
he sounds like a good egg.
To the outside world, Dean Henderson doesn't seem like a problematic player, but apparently he is a little bit of a problem. Why? One of the reasons he wasn't in the squad last night is because he's been a little bit problematic. Yeah, so it's that sort of thing that needs to happen. Jesse Lingard.
Wait, realistically, how many guys do you think you can move on in January?
In January, I think that we'll be lucky to see one or two players moved on. I think Dean Henderson is going to move on this January. But
I can take Dean Henderson, by the way.
You're not going to. Spurs do.
Yes, they do.
We'll take
I'm
Henderson.
not sure that Dean Henderson is a bad kid. I think that he's probably very frustrated with his loss in life and he's acting out. But a tantrum thrower, you're not sure whether you want that at your club. So good luck to anybody. He's a great goalkeeper. Like, I think he'll do well and have a long Premier League career. But the fact of the matter is that he's thrown tantrums at United, and I personally think that we at this point in Man United squad development, we need to get rid of the tantrum throwers. So he needs out.
That's become the United culture, and that unfortunately is the big issue. That I think that it's been years and years of tantrum throwers, and he just falls in line with what's been going on before. He cannot be one of the main instigators when he's hardly playing. But the thing is, because he got a chance to actually go and play football and showed what he's made of, he's come back, and because promises were made, right, and they weren't kept. And this is one of the biggest issues that you have at United. And I think there's so many promises made to so many players, but the reality is you can see who the big guys are because they play every week. And somebody like Paul Pogba, who is your absolute all-time favorite, I know you've got at least 7 of his shirts. Pogba has been given preferential treatment from day one. Even bringing him back was this big deal. And so it's one of those where, much like the Lukaku situation, everything was around Pogba's going to be the guy. He'll sort us out. He's been here from when he was a kid. And then it just hasn't happened because he knew he was undroppable. And Henderson is now looking at somebody like him and saying, well, if he's going to have a pop, I'm also going to have a pop. And everybody's going for it.
No, that's exactly right. And Henderson isn't necessarily one of the big instigators. Just so happens that he's the person where they're saying that the dressing room leaks are coming from. So for me, that's problematic behavior. If you are breaching the sanctity of the dressing room, that's problematic behavior, and you need to be moved on. Different clubs have different issues at the moment. Man United created issues when they chose player power over Jose Mourinho. Man United had a decision to make. And look, we all had reservations about Mourinho and about what was going on at the club, but the club made a decision. They chose player power. It bought into this culture that Cyrus is talking about that has now perpetuated over a long period of time. We've bought into the player power, and now we have chickens coming home to roost. So getting back to Dean's question, Martial and Henderson, we'd be lucky to move them out this month, with Pogba, Lingard, and Van der Beek following probably in the summer. I think that a 5-man clear out with probably Phil Jones, but the problem is Phil Jones puts himself in the shop window and then gets injured. So we can have this 5 or 6-man clear out, but those realistically are the options that we'll be able to get out in the next 2 transfer windows. And I think that's.
I'm surprised you didn't say Viva Ronaldo.
I would
Look,
get rid of him.
we've made our
No.
bed and we can have to. We've made
He's
our bed
there.
and we can have to sleep in it. But I don't think Ronaldo is part of the cultural issue here.
Yeah.
I think he's part
Okay.
of the tactical issue on the field, but I don't think he's part of the cultural issue. And I'm
Okay.
stamping out the cultural issue.
That's a 2023 issue
And
that
it's-
we'll deal with.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's surprising. It's also surprising that Marcus Rashford couldn't sort this out. You know,
He's
Marcus
got
is-
let's not
Great
go
job.
there.
such a lack of
But
confidence.
Marcus Rashford looks like a broken man. He looks like a man not enjoying his football. He looks like a man who doesn't want to be there, and that is another issue that needs to be sorted out. You'd hope that
Look.
Ralph's psychologist helps it, but he looks like he wants to be the furthest thing away from a football field and feeding kids rather. I don't know where he's
Food
rather.
bank
he-
Borini. Thanks
He
to
looks
Tala.
he looks like a guy who listens to the cheap seats and Cyrus talking smack about him. But I want to say something that outside of the names that you mentioned there, Wahid, one of the biggest problems, and you talk about the bloated squad size at United, is that you've held on to the likes of Matic and Mata way too long. They've been good servants for the club.
Mata will be
Those
gone,
guys
and
have
I
got
didn't
to
mention
go.
Eric Bailly. I think Bailly
Yeah.
will probably see the door at some point
He
too.
has to. He has to.
Yes.
Possibly even Lindelof. But
Yeah, I don't know about
I
Lindelof, but I feel like Bailly is part of one of those problematic cliques. And if Ralph gets his way, I think Ralph will probably assess the squad over the 6 months
yeah,
and give direction to whoever comes in the summer. If it isn't Ralph himself who takes over,
it
but
won't be him.
I suspect that they'll try and get rid of these cliques.
Okay, that's a good place
Yeah.
to
Going
end the
into
Manchester
the
United
summer,
discussion.
to use Ole's words, I'd rather have a hole in the squad than an arsehole in the squad.
Okay, that's the great place for us to stop the Manchester United discussion. Let's go quickly around the box. Just one thing for each team that I'm going to bring up. West Ham. What's the one thing you think West Ham should do in January? Dean, I'm going to start with you. I'm going to go Dean, Cyrus, Wahid.
It's easy. They need an Antonio backup / replacement, because if that guy's injured or when he moves on, their strike force is almost as bad as Spurs. So I reckon that's the number one thing.
Their strike force is almost as bad as Spurs. Spurs have one of the best strike forces in the entire England.
Yeah, but we're not firing. So
Yeah,
I would take
fine.
Jared Bowen over some of the guys in the Spurs squad for sure.
I mean, yes, maybe Lucas Moura.
Ooh,
Cyrus, Cyrus, what's the one thing West Ham needs in
Definitely a
Jan?
striker. Definitely a striker. And I'll tell you something for nothing, because that's what I'll do. Ollie Watkins would be perfect at West Ham. He's not going to leave Villa for West Ham, but he's the kind of striker that West Ham could definitely utilize. Big guy, runs at the defenders quite well, and is great in the air. That's what West Ham needs, somebody in that ilk. Dare we say, who's Fulham's almighty striking hero that destroyed the championship?
Not
Yeah,
Mitrovic. No, we've seen it before.
I'm not saying Mitrovic. I'm saying somebody who does what Mitrovic does at Fulham in the championship.
Yeah.
Okay. Wahid, what's the one thing that West Ham needs in Jan?
Yeah, Nacho. He doesn't get enough time at Leicester, and he'd be a very good option for West Ham up front.
That's why we love you, Wahid. You come with the specific players.
Nacho.
Yeah, he'd be good.
No, it's a good call. Because they've
You might as well say Chris Wood.
No.
Nah.
Don't even compare them, but Chris Wood. Oh, no, whoa. There's no ways.
And
Ian Nacho probably envisaged more game time, but now with Jamie Vardy and Patson Daka, he's probably just not getting as much game time as he envisaged. So I think he could be the one to move on, probably ahead of Patson Daka.
Yeah.
So if I were him, I'd be looking to move on, and West Ham would be a good fit if I were looking. Yeah.
Okay. Next team, relevant team, Leicester. Cyrus, what's the one thing that Leicester needs to do in January?
They need to cobble together all of the resources they can find in the world to get a center back that will stay there and absolutely sort out their defense, because they've thrown everything at the wall. Vestergaard, Soyuncu, and some of these guys have been really good in spells, but they just haven't found I mean, crazily enough, they've never been able to replace Wes Morgan. Where's Morgan, guys? Where's Morgan? They haven't been able to replace him. And I think that's where Leicester really have to look at it. And crazily, right? Yes, they do have somebody on the long-term injury list. Who is the young French centre-back?
Fofana.
Not Fofana? Fofana. Right? He's due to come back. He's really good. You mentioned Liverpool centre-backs not getting game time. Joe Gomez would be fantastic at Leicester. Him and Fofana, centre-back pairing of the future.
But they've got Vestergaard, or was Vestergaard a stopgap?
Let's look at Vestergaard. Yeah, he is. In fact, there's a bench behind the bench that Yannick Vestergaard could potentially build and maybe sit on. Look, I'm being very harsh. I'm being very harsh.
Short-term option, if they want a short-term option, Phil Jones on loan.
Phil Jones.
Get lost, man.
No, guys. Okay. Is that the one thing they need, Wahid? Is that the one thing?
I'm trying to move on my players. Come, bring up Newcastle. I'm going to give you a list of players they can take from us.
Okay, cool. Let me go to Dean. Dean, is there anything that Leicester needs?
I would say, and it's a bit of an interesting one, but Harvey Barnes at the moment isn't really firing that well, and I honestly think ASM could work pretty well at Leicester and run a bit rampant over there with that pace up front. So yeah, I reckon Alan Saint-Maximin could work at Leicester. Not that it's not as needed as a centre back. 100%, I think centre backs first, but I think he wouldn't be a bad addition to that front, that attacking side of them.
What about Delhi?
Okay. Yes,
he's going to Newcastle. We need more money.
Yeah, so I would say with but
Todd Cantwell probably needs a change of scenery as well.
Yeah.
He was very, very good at Norwich initially. He's gone off the boil a little bit. A change of scenery, Leicester might be the place for that.
Yeah, I'd say a number 10, someone behind there, and you guys have named all those names. Finally, Wahid, I'm going to start with you. Newcastle. What's the one thing? Not five.
And you can't just list the players you don't want at your club.
Or you can say go to Manchester United and ask for 5 players.
Yeah.
That you can say.
Honestly, they need. It's hard to say one because they need 2 things. They need a spine. They need a spine. They need a centre forward, they need a centre midfielder, and they need a centre back. So they actually need 3 things, but I'm going to call it one as a spine. So if we start up front, I think they should target Big Cock Divock. He'd be very good on side. They should probably target a central midfielder like Wijnaldum, who has Newcastle ties. If they offer him a ton of money, he might be able to go and help them out there. And centre back of good ilk. I'll mention Eric Bailly. I think he could be one of those players who could go there and try and help out in the situation they're currently in. So they need a spine, and that's probably where they should target all their resources right now. Trippier was could be a good signing, but it's probably not exactly what they need. Probably sort out your spine before you go sort out everywhere else.
Yeah, I thought they were luxury. Cyrus, Newcastle. All this money, what should they do?
I think the key area is midfield. I've been saying that to them for a long time. And I think that they have enough in defense to boot the ball out if needed. But they don't have enough to stop teams from running at them, nor do they have enough to open teams up. And this whole idea of Joe Linton being the downgrade for Mino is just not working. I have a real issue with Joe Linton. And so I think that's where they've got to look at it. And so I'll say midfield, but it's attack and defense. And I mean, Aaron Ramsey would be good from an attacking perspective. I think he's somebody they could get. But also, when you look at the defensive side of things, it becomes a bit trickier. If they've got the money and they're willing to throw it at teams, does West Ham say no to Newcastle and Declan Rice if they come calling with a massive amount of money?
That's like 200 million though.
I don't know. If I
but
think they get
Declan
him
Rice
for 80.
probably says no to that move.
Yeah.
Yes,
Look,
yeah.
potentially. Till he
Depends,
sees
maybe
what they're
in
gonna
3-4
offer him.
years.
What's Declan Rice earning? You know,
Yeah.
Newcastle could. They are so far behind financial fair play stuff that they could make Declan Rice the highest paid player in England. And you tell me he wouldn't take that risk.
I would suggest a player like Adrian Rabiot, who has been known to chase a bit of money around.
No, that mama's
Yeah.
boy.
Well, not just that. You talked about culture and certain players being bad in dressing rooms. He's a good player. I like Rabiot. I do think that the issue here is really adapting to what happens in England. Just remember what happened to Saul the first game he played. No one even knew he was on the pitch. He was so bad. So I think that's the kind of thing that Newcastle will be very aware of. That if they're going to get somebody, I mean, even somebody like McGinn at Villa would be a really good player to sort of try and bring into that Newcastle setup. And I think all of these guys are gettable. And dare I even say, and this is a player I felt could actually work at Spurs, Conor Gallagher. There might be a need for Chelsea to end up.
Surely he goes back though.
No, he
goes back to Chelsea. Yeah.
Just remember, at some
Some
point,
Mason
the
Mount
player
to
says,
Newcastle before.
look, I absolutely love Mason Mount, but Conor Gallagher is the man. He's unbelievable and has better hair.
Yeah.
He has better hair than
Dele Alli must go to Newcastle. I think that's the perfect club for him. He needs to go. He needs to reboot. He needs to. But he can offer a lot in that midfield. He under Conte, he's worked hard. It's just not clicking. It's just not clicking, and he needs to go to a worse club.
We look at Newcastle and we keep thinking that Steve Bruce is the manager there, and that's one of the things that we're starting to see more and more. That I'm really loving the job that's being done at present. They're playing a different and a better brand of football. Steve Bruce was literally just run out there and just kick the ball, and Eddie Howe's got them playing some good football. They just don't have the players to make things work.
Except against Cambridge.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Wahid, you say that Newcastle need their own version of City's James Milner. I'm thinking when you said that, I was like Jordan Henderson. If Liverpool want to move over into the next level, Jordan Henderson is spare parts right now. Right now he isn't, but he could be the guy they could throw lots of money at and be the spine, the culture leader for this revival.
I don't think he'd make that move. I don't think he'd be willing to make that move down the rungs, but potentially
he might. But no. Wahid, no. Do you know what the worst part is making a club like Newcastle a retirement home? Yes, get younger guys who are not playing games at other clubs. But as soon as you bring in the likes of Jordan Henderson, this used to happen with United players when they left. Nicky Butt went to Newcastle, was absolute dog stuff. You look at some of these guys and you need people who want to be playing. They want to give their all.
I think Ralph Rangnick said it about Leipzig, and apparently when he first interviewed at that job, they asked him what's broken, and he said that they're now a rich club, and they're trying to attract players who on their last contract and looking for their last contract, and the desire of a player on their last contract isn't the same as a player you're handing their first real contract to.
Yeah.
And that was the cultural shift he made at Leipzig. Leipzig had a lot of money and didn't know what to do with it. And his cultural shift was to stop giving players their last contract and instead focus on giving players their first contract. And that's the way he built Leipzig up to what they are today.
Yeah.
Sounds like Ralph needs to go and coach at Newcastle. That's where we're going to end it today, guys. Thank you very much, everyone, for watching and listening. We're back for 2022. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. And we'll be back next week with our normal stuff, FPL, as well as the normal cheap seats. Remember that you can purchase a shirt from Classic Shirts ZA. You can purchase a shirt from them. the code. Just trying to find the code here. I had done it before. Is I'll get it up. Not cheap seats. I beg your pardon. Cheap seats. 50. That's
Only
the
one
code.
seat for you.
Yes, but it's CheapSeats 50. You can get a discount, and you can have a look on their website and also on Instagram. They have some really lovely shirts and the like. But thank you, Wahid. Thanks, Dean. Thanks, Cyrus. And we'll be back next week because it's FA Cup week. There are some Premier League games, but we don't talk about small clubs here. This week we'll talk about the big ones next week, the ones that are in the top four. But Dean, good luck for. Yes, but Dean, good luck for the North London derby over the weekend. It's going to be a cracker in that toilet seat. Outside of that, thank you very much, everyone. Have a good day and le sale kakahiso.